My name is Talia R. Benton. I am 34 years old. The moment my husband said, "From now on, my income is mine and you take care of your share," I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I did not even blink. I just nodded. That was the moment everything in our marriage started to collapse. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a structure that had been unstable for years finally shifting under its own weight. I am a senior software engineer in Houston, Texas. I make about $145,000 a year. My husband, Cedric Benton, is 31 and works as a marketing manager making around $78,000. We had been married 6 years. We had a 4-year-old daughter named Amaya. Until that dinner, I thought I understood what our marriage was. I thought I understood love. I thought love meant support, sacrifice, and stability. I thought if one person had more, that person carried more. I thought if you loved someone, you did not keep score. What I did not understand was that there is a difference between carrying your family and carrying another grown adult who has learned to call your labor love because it benefits him. From the beginning, I paid for almost everything. Not metaphorically, literally everything that kept our life standing. The mortgage was $2,800. Property taxes were $450. Insurance was $180. The cars cost $320. Utilities averaged $380. Groceries were around $900. Daycare was $1,400. Medical costs, house maintenance, birthday gifts, school supplies, restaurant dinners. Cedric insisted kept us connected. Weekend outings, holiday travel, streaming services, repairs, small emergencies, and all the invisible adult expenses that keep a household from unraveling added up to a life I financed almost alone. Month after month, year after year, it was over $7,000. Cedric paid his phone bill. Sometimes he picked up groceries if I sent him a list. Every now and then he covered takeout and acted like that made us balanced. I did not question it because I believed that since I made more, it made sense. I told myself it balanced out. It did not. It simply made it easier for him to never become the man he kept promising he would grow into. The truth is, I loved him sincerely enough to make excuses for him long past the point where excuses made sense. When we first got married, Cedric stood in our half-furnished living room with 2 folding chairs, 1 mattress on the floor, and moving boxes stacked like walls around us. He held my face in both hands and said, "You will never carry this family alone." I remember that night clearly because it was raining outside and the roof of that first townhouse made this soft tapping sound that felt almost cozy. I had just closed on the property using my savings and excellent credit because his debt-to-income ratio would have complicated the process. He looked embarrassed about that. Then he kissed my forehead and promised me that once he got settled into his career, once he found his footing, once the promotions came, he would make sure I never felt like the only adult in the room. I believed him. Later, when I worked late through my pregnancy with Amaya because we needed the money and his bonus never appeared, I believed him again when he said it was temporary. When I returned to work sooner than I wanted because one income was too risky, I believed him then too. I kept believing him because every marriage has an early story you cling to when the later story starts hurting. Looking back, the betrayal did not begin with the affair. It did not even begin with the money. It began with the way Cedric got used to being served by the life I built. He got comfortable coming home to clean laundry, a warm meal, paid bills, stocked cabinets, scheduled doctor appointments, birthday gifts already bought, school forms already signed, and a daughter who only needed his easiest pieces. He became the parent who arrived for the cute moments and disappeared for the tedious ones. He was the one who carried Amaya into the living room and let her fall asleep on his chest during movies. I was the one who kept the insurance active, the pediatrician informed, the daycare paid, the emergency contacts updated, and the medicine cabinet stocked at midnight when she had a fever. He loved the image of being a husband and father. I handled the infrastructure of it. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes from doing everything without being openly mistreated because it leaves you wondering whether you are being generous or simply erased a little at a time. The shift that made everything visible started with influence. One Friday night, Cedric went out with coworkers, and when he came home, something about him felt altered. Not drunk, not careless, calculated. He was quieter than usual, but not in a tired way. It was the silence of a man who had been handed a new script and was trying on the lines. He mentioned one coworker in passing, Patrice Holloway, twice divorced, loud, self-assured, the kind of woman who treated selfishness like a personality strength. Cedric had talked about her before, usually with amusement, like she was dramatic office entertainment. But that night, there was something else in his tone, a kind of respect. The next evening, we were at the kitchen table while Amaya stacked plastic fruit on the floor nearby. Cedric said it like a business proposal. "I have been thinking," he told me, cutting into his salmon without looking up, "and I think from now on, my income should be mine. We should split everything evenly, 50-50, like a real partnership." He said it like he was correcting an injustice instead of standing on top of one. I looked at him for his long moment. The house smelled like garlic, lemon, and roasted vegetables. Amaya was humming to herself on the floor. Outside the kitchen window, the yard lights were just starting to flicker on. It should have felt like an ordinary evening. Instead, it felt like the first crack in ice before a lake gives way. "Okay," I said, 50-50. He smiled. That smile told me everything. He thought I would panic. He thought I would plead. He thought the idea of equal responsibility would intimidate me into preserving the old arrangement. What he had not done, what men like Cedric almost never do when they start talking about fairness from a position of advantage, was the math. That night, after Amaya was asleep and the house was quiet, I opened my laptop and pulled 6 years of records: mortgage statements, utility bills, grocery logs, childcare receipts, insurance payments, medical invoices, repairs, travel, subscriptions, maintenance, school deposits, Christmas expenses, birthday parties, every transfer, every charge, every amount that had gone from my account into the life we called ours. By midnight, my screen looked like a forensic audit. By 1 in the morning, I had a number. His half was $3,665 every month, not including any historical imbalance. Out of his take-home pay, that would leave him a little over $1,000 for himself. Reality was suddenly very expensive. I printed the spreadsheet and set it beside his coffee cup the next morning. He came into the kitchen, stretching and yawning like it was any ordinary Sunday, kissed the top of my head, poured creamer into his mug, and then saw the paper. I watched the exact moment his confidence dissolved. "What is this?" he asked. "Your half," I said. He read faster the further down the page he got, like speed might change the totals. "I cannot afford this," he said finally. I leaned against the counter and folded my arms. "That is interesting," I told him. "I have been affording the full amount for 6 years." He tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "Talia, be serious." "I am serious," I said. "You asked for equal. Equal costs money." He stared at the paper again, as if he expected the numbers to rearrange themselves into something more flattering. Then he looked at me with something close to resentment. That was when I realized this had never been about equality for him. It was about language. He wanted the language of fairness while keeping the comfort of being carried. He did not pay that weekend. He did not pay on Monday either. By Tuesday night, he was irritated rather than ashamed, which told me something else was going on beneath the surface. Most people confronted with math they cannot escape feel fear. Cedric did not sound afraid. He sounded inconvenienced. By Wednesday, I came home from work around 5:30 and immediately knew something was wrong. There were unfamiliar shoes by the door. A coat hung on the rack that I did not recognize. Then I heard a woman's voice from the living room, smooth and confident, already occupying my space as if she had decided she belonged there. When I walked in, Patrice Holloway was sitting on my couch with a mug in her hand, ankles crossed, smiling like she had arrived for a performance. Cedric sat beside her with his arms folded and his face arranged into that defensive expression he always wore when he believed support had arrived. "Talia," he said, "Patrice is here to help us talk." I set my purse down slowly. "In my house?" I asked. I kept my tone quiet because volume was not going to improve what I was looking at. Patrice leaned forward with the calm confidence of someone who had mistaken audacity for authority. "You are turning your marriage into a transaction," she said. "Real relationships do not work like spreadsheets. Real wives do not nickel and dime their husbands." I let her finish every word, every carefully packaged accusation, every manipulative little attempt to make reason sound cruel and exploitation sound warm. Cedric kept glancing at her like he had outsourced his backbone. When she was done, I asked one question. How much did your ex-husband pay you in alimony when you left him for not providing enough? The silence after that was immediate and dense. Cedric turned to look at her. Patrice's smile slipped. Excuse me, she said. I said what I said, I replied, since we are all apparently discussing what partners owe each other. Cedric jumped in too quickly. This is not about her. It is exactly about her, I said. It is about two people sitting in a house I pay for, trying to convince me that I should continue financing a life neither of you wants to fund yourselves. Patrice's expression hardened. You are being emotional. I almost laughed. No, I said, I am being precise. Cedric stood up then, agitated now that the performance was slipping. You are destroying our family over money. I looked at him for a long time, really looked at him. And for the first time in years, I did not feel confused or defensive. I felt clear. No, I said, I am exposing it. Patrice left with a tight mouth and an offended posture, but not before delivering one last line over her shoulder. Men do not stay in situations where they feel controlled. I nearly smiled at that because control had never been the issue. Silence had. Cedric spent the rest of the evening pacing, slamming cabinet doors, muttering about respect, pressure, and how impossible I had become. For the first time in our marriage, I did not move toward his frustration to soften it. I did not coax. I did not explain. I did not try to rescue his mood from the consequences of his own behavior. I bathed Amaya, read her 2 stories, tucked her in, and went about the rest of my night like the storm in the kitchen belonged entirely to him. That was the beginning of the real break. He started paying, but badly. Not consistently, not cleanly. Every transfer came with commentary. Every bill came with a resentment. Every expense came with some theatrical sigh, some muttered complaint about being used. His lunches became simpler. The subscriptions disappeared. The random gadgets stopped appearing on the porch. Weekend brunches with colleagues grew less frequent. I watched comfort drain out of him piece by piece. And with it, another truth surfaced. This was not only about money, it was about something he was hiding. 2 weeks into our new arrangement, Amaya's daycare called to tell me his half had not been paid. Not delayed, not processed late, ignored. I stepped out of a meeting at work, listened to the receptionist explain the balance, and felt a cold stillness settle over me. That evening when I confronted him, Cedric barely looked up from his phone. A mother should handle childcare, he said. I can still feel the exact sensation that sentence caused in my body. It was not surprise. It was finality. Because in that one sentence, he gave away the entire truth. This had never been about equality. He wanted freedom when it benefited him and dependence when it cost him. He wanted to announce principles that only applied to money he felt entitled to keep. He wanted to call our daughter a shared blessing while treating her expenses like my private obligation. I paid the daycare that same day because Amaya was never going to feel the consequences of her father's pride. But I did not let the moment disappear. I documented the invoice, the missed amount, the date, the call, and his exact words. By then I understood that when someone refuses responsibility consistently, it is not a phase. It is a pattern. Patterns leave evidence. That night, the truth reached for me. Cedric was in the shower and I walked past the bathroom and noticed his tablet on the counter, unlocked, screen glowing softly against the tile. I was not snooping. I was not looking for anything. But one app caught my eye because I did not recognize it. It was a banking application we did not use. I picked up the tablet and opened it. $22,000. For a second, I thought I was misreading it. Then I checked the transaction history. Small transfers over 8 months. 500 here, 800 there, 1,000 another week. Quiet amounts, deliberate enough to escape attention, but regular enough to build something substantial. My whole body went still. He had not been unable to pay. He had been unwilling. While arguing that fairness was unreasonable, he had been quietly building a safety net behind my back. While telling me we needed to be more equal, he had been funneling money away from the home I was still carrying. I checked payment apps next. Transactions to someone saved as DB, dinner, weekend, hotel split, a heart emoji next to one entry, then 3 separate short-term rental bookings in New Orleans over 4 months. The dates aligned perfectly with his work trips. Every unexplained absence, every late meeting, every last-minute conference, every lie clicked into place with almost insulting precision. What hurt most was not the cheating itself. Not yet. It was the detail that sharpened it into something uglier. One of the payments had been made the same week Amaya had strep throat, and I slept on the floor beside her bed for 3 nights because she kept waking up crying. Cedric had told me he could not leave a client event early. I remember standing at the sink at 2 in the morning, washing medicine syringes while texting him updates and receiving dry little replies about being stuck in meetings. Meanwhile, he had been sending money to another woman and booking time away. Another transaction matched a weekend. He told me he had volunteered to attend a company retreat because the networking mattered for our future. Our future. That phrase had paid for part of his affair. I took screenshots of everything, every balance, every transfer, every payment, every booking, every timestamp. I sent them to my phone, locked the screen, put the tablet back exactly where I had found it, and walked away before the shower stopped running. That night, he kissed me goodnight and asked whether I was all right because I seemed tired. I smiled and said I was fine. When you are collecting evidence, you learn how to smile. At 1 in the morning, I sent everything to my brother Leon. At 2:13, my phone lit up with his reply. I found out who DB is. You need to sit down. The next morning, we met at a quiet coffee shop across town. Leon was already there with his laptop open and that expression he gets when he is trying very hard not to let anger outrun usefulness. He did not waste time softening anything. He turned the screen toward me. Danica Brooks, Senior Marketing Director at Cedric's company. Photo after photo. Social media posts. Timestamps. A green silk blouse, I remembered, because Cedric had once commented under a company event picture that it was a powerful look. Receipt copies tied to his work card, a dinner reservation after a conference, hotel lounge photos, dates aligned with every business trip he had sold me as sacrifice. It was sustained, organized, intentional. Not one mistake, not one weak moment. A structure. He had been building a second life with the same methodical quiet I had used to build our first one. Leon watched my face carefully. What do you want to do? He asked. I picked up my coffee, which had already gone cold. The math, I said. No confrontation, no warning, strategy. Because by then I understood something important. This was no longer just heartbreak. It was leverage. That afternoon, I hired a divorce attorney named Felicia Grant. Calm, exact, impossible to rattle. She was the kind of woman who listened with her whole face still, then asked one question so sharp it cut straight through confusion. I told her everything. The financial imbalance, the hidden account, the daycare refusal, the affair, the transfers, the coworker interference, the lies tied to our daughter. She took notes and finally said, the hidden account matters, the affair matters, but the financial pattern over 6 years matters most. People think betrayal cases turn on emotion. In court, they turn on documentation. I asked her what I should do next. Act normal, she said. Gather everything. Do not tip him off. Let him keep underestimating you. So I did. For 2 weeks, I became the version of myself Cedric expected. I cooked dinner. I packed Amaya's bag for preschool. I smiled when he spoke. I let him think the tension had settled into something survivable. At night, after he fell asleep, I downloaded statements, copied records, backed up texts, and built files so complete that there would be no room left for his version of events to breathe. During those 2 weeks, I kept seeing memories that now felt contaminated. I remembered the year Cedric lost his car, and I drained a savings account to replace it because he said not having reliable transportation could affect his job. He cried then. He told me nobody had ever believed in him the way I did. I remembered taking freelance coding work after Amaya was born because daycare was more than we expected, and he insisted his job was in a temporary transition period. I remembered him promising me that once he got his footing, once he got promoted, once the pressure eased, he would take us on a proper anniversary trip because I deserved to be spoiled for once. We never took that trip. He did, however, manage 3 private weekends with another woman in a city he said he hated traveling to. The memories kept reordering themselves into evidence. That was one of the worst parts. Betrayal does not only wound the present, it goes back and poisons moments you once used as proof that love was real. Then Wednesday came and Cedric mentioned another trip. Conference in New Orleans, he said casually while rinsing his plate. I have to leave Friday afternoon. Same tone, same pattern, same carefully ordinary delivery. I was standing at the stove stirring pasta for Amaya. For a second, I had to grip the spoon harder just to keep my hand steady. Have fun, I said. He looked at me, studying my face for cracks, then leaned in and kissed my forehead. I love you, he said. I love you too, I answered. And for the first time in our marriage, those words were not about him. They were about timing. The second his car disappeared down the street on Friday, I moved. There was no dramatic pause, no sitting on the edge of the bed doubting myself. Clarity had already replaced hesitation. I had prepared an apartment 15 minutes away, safe and quiet, with a small playground visible from the living room window, so Amaya could wake up to something peaceful instead of tension. Her room was ready with lavender walls, fresh sheets, books lined on a low shelf, and her stuffed elephant waiting on the pillow like it had always belonged there. That evening, I packed only what mattered: my clothes, important documents, birth certificates, insurance papers, tax returns, school files, medical records, my work laptop, Maya's favorite blankets and pajamas, family photos that felt like mine rather than ours, the books I had bought her, the framed print from my mother. Everything else stayed. I did not want Cedric to notice what I had taken. I wanted him to feel what was gone. When I picked Amaya up, she held my hand and looked up at me with quiet curiosity. Are we going somewhere? She asked. Yes, baby, I said. We are going somewhere better. She nodded like she trusted me completely, and that trust steadied something inside me that had been shaking in private for days. By Saturday morning, Felicia had filed the divorce petition. No confrontation, no scene, just paperwork, evidence, and timing. Sunday evening, my phone rang. Cedric. Where is Amaya? He asked immediately. His voice was tight, controlled. But under it, I heard something new. Fear. She is with me, I said. What are you talking about? I came home and the house is half empty. Your office is cleared out. Her room is empty. What is going on? I leaned against my new kitchen counter and let the silence stretch for one deliberate breath. How was New Orleans? I asked. There was a pause. Fine, he said too quickly. The conference was... How was Danica? I asked. Silence, not confusion, not delay, confirmation. I did not raise my voice. I just laid it out piece by piece. 3 rental bookings, hotel split charges, payment app transfers with heart emojis, quiet transfers into your hidden account, the daycare payment you refused, the money you moved while telling me you could not afford your share, the weekend you said you were trapped in client meetings while Amaya was sick in bed. I have all of it. He broke then, but not in a loud way. It sounded like a man realizing the person he thought he was managing had been keeping score in a language he did not speak. It is not what you think, he said. It is exactly what I think, I replied. You used money I earned to help fund weekends with another woman while telling me you could not afford your own daughter's daycare. You called fairness unreasonable while building an exit plan behind my back. You wanted independence, but only if I paid for it. He did not answer because there was nothing left to say. Good night, Cedric, I said, and I hung up. My hand did not shake. My voice did not break. Inside, something was screaming, something that had loved him hard enough to build a life around his promises. But I could not let that part of me take control because if I let pain speak first, it would ask for understanding. And I was done offering understanding to a man who had used it as cover. Within minutes, my phone exploded. Calls, messages, voicemails. His mother, Patrice. 2 unknown numbers that I assumed were friends or relatives drafted into service. Every message carried some version of the same script. Think about your family. Marriage is hard. Do not throw everything away. People make mistakes. You are overreacting. I listened to one voicemail from Patrice that actually made me laugh. She called what Cedric had done an emotional misstep under financial stress, as if my husband had accidentally sustained a second relationship while hiding money over 8 months. I forwarded every message to Felicia and blocked the worst offenders. That night in the new apartment, with Maya asleep under her elephant blanket and the silence finally clean around us, I felt something I had not felt in years. Not happiness, not yet. Choice, the kind that returns when you stop negotiating with your own erasure. 5 days after I moved out, A certified letter arrived at my apartment. I opened it at the kitchen table while Amaya ate cereal beside me, swinging her legs and humming under her breath, blissfully unaware that her parents were now two opposing stories written in legal language. As I read, I realized Cedric had not only reacted, he had tried to rewrite reality. He was asking for primary custody of Amaya. He wanted $4,000 a month in alimony. He wanted half my savings, half my retirement, and half the equity in the house I had paid for almost entirely myself. His grounds were abandonment and financial abuse. I read it once, then again, and then I laughed because it was so detached from the documented truth that it almost felt delusional. Me, the woman who had spent over $500,000 holding our household together while he quietly financed an affair, was now the abuser. I called Felicia. She did not sound surprised. "This is what people do when their advantage disappears," she said. "They try to replace it with narrative." "Can he actually get any of this?" I asked. "Not with what we have," she said. "Evidence beats invention." Felicia responded not with outrage, but with structure. The packet she sent to Cedric's attorney ran 47 pages. Every claim was answered. Every contradiction was mapped. 6 years of financial records showed the household imbalance. Bank statements showed the hidden transfers. Payment app histories tied expenses to the affair. Daycare records showed non-payment. Screenshots documented timelines. Texts contradicted his alleged sacrifices. One section laid out line by line how often he described work obligations that overlapped with personal trips. Another section documented how I had continued covering child-related costs while he concealed liquid assets. At the bottom of one page, Felicia included a sentence so crisp I read it 3 times just to enjoy it. "Cedric Benton's claims are not only unsupported, they are directly contradicted by documented evidence of financial concealment, marital misconduct, and prolonged non-participation in shared household obligations." His lawyer received the packet on Thursday. By Friday, Cedric had fired him. He did not hire another immediately because there was almost nothing left to argue unless he planned to fabricate harder. That was when his world started collapsing in ways no spreadsheet had even needed to predict. Danica disappeared first. The woman he had been seeing blocked him everywhere once the divorce filing and financial evidence made things real. What she had wanted apparently was the polished version of him, the version with access to my income, a stable home address, convenient freedom, and none of the actual cost. Once consequence entered the picture, she vanished. Patrice's circle turned on him too. One of her friends reached out privately to my attorney, offering a statement about conversations she had overheard. Because when people realize they have participated in something ugly, self-protection arrives fast. Cedric's mother called me a few days later. Her voice sounded stripped down, exhausted in a way I had never heard before. "I raised him to expect everything," she said quietly, "and to offer almost nothing. This is what it cost." I did not comfort her. Some truths do not need response. At work, Cedric's life began cracking as well. Leon heard through a mutual contact that management had started asking questions about misuse of company travel reimbursements after inconsistencies surfaced. He did not lose his job immediately, but his reputation changed. There is a special humiliation in being exposed not as reckless, but as small. The social embarrassment mattered more to Cedric than I would have guessed. He could survive private guilt if he had to. Public diminishment was different. He had always cared how rooms received him. He liked being charming. He liked appearing easy, generous, admired. Now the same coworkers who used to laugh at his stories were watching him with caution. The polished confidence that once looked natural started to resemble performance. A week later, I learned from a neighbor that Cedric had shown up at the old house, angry because a package had been redirected and several utility accounts were already in transition. He looked shocked, she told me gently, like he thought things would still revolve around him. That comment stayed with me because it captured something important. Men like Cedric do not imagine systems after they leave. They assume the system waits for them, humming quietly in place until they decide whether they still want it. I had been that system: the mortgage auto drafts, the utilities, the school reminders, the household rhythm, the emotional labor, the backup plans, the reason life stayed padded and functioning. When I removed myself, He was left facing the actual effort of being himself without my infrastructure. 2 weeks after the legal response went out, there were 3 quiet knocks on my apartment door, a little after 11 at night. I knew it was him before I opened it. Cedric stood there looking thinner, quieter, stripped of the polished ease he used to wear so casually. No anger, no performance, no script, just a man who had finally run out of places to hide. "I am not here to fight," he said. I stepped aside and he walked in carefully, as if unsure he still had permission to occupy space near me. The apartment was dim, except for the kitchen light. Amaya was asleep. Cedric looked around slowly, taking in the small couch, the toy basket, the framed art, the soft domestic peace of a life rebuilt without him. "I know what I did," he said. "I did not help him. I did not rescue him from the discomfort of naming it." He admitted everything then, the money, the hidden account, the trips, the lies, listening to Patrice, convincing himself he deserved more while taking more, telling himself he was trapped while standing in comfort that I funded, using work as cover, using our daughter's needs as an excuse when it suited him and a burden when it cost him, turning me into a system instead of a partner. I listened without interrupting. When he was done, the silence in the room felt complete, almost sacred in its honesty. "You are right," I said finally. "You deserve to say it out loud." He nodded once, eyes on the floor. "I know it does not undo anything." "No," I said, "it does not." He reached into his pocket and placed a key on the kitchen table. "I am moving back in with my mother," he said. "The house is yours. I told my lawyer to stop fighting for things that were never really mine." He swallowed hard before adding, "I just want to see Amaya. I do not want her punished because I failed you." For the first time that night, I felt something like grief move through me instead of anger. Not grief for the marriage exactly. Grief for the version of him I waited too long to stop believing in. "She is your daughter," I said. "That does not change." He nodded, then looked around one more time as if trying to understand what he had thrown away. "You made this place feel peaceful fast," he said quietly. "It always would have been peaceful," I replied. "You just confused peace with access." He closed his eyes for a second at that, then left without asking for anything else. After he walked out, I sat at the table for a long time without moving. Not thinking, not crying, just letting everything settle into its final shape. Then Amaya wandered sleepily into the room, clutching her elephant, and climbed into my lap. "You still awake, Mommy?" she mumbled. "Yes, baby," I whispered. She tucked herself against me and said, half asleep, "I am lucky too." I held her tighter and realized that what I felt in that moment was not triumph. It was release. The kind that comes when your life stops leaking energy into a person determined to misuse it. Over the next several weeks, the legal terms narrowed quickly. No trial, shared custody with Amaya living primarily with me. No alimony, the house remained mine. Cedric kept his hidden savings account, though it turned out not to be enough to preserve the image of independence he had built around it. Once rent, transportation, legal fees, and the ordinary costs of adulthood landed fully on him, that money shrank fast. He started therapy. His mother told me unexpectedly that he had stopped blaming me and started talking about entitlement as if it were a language he had grown up fluent in and never learned to hear. The divorce finalized in August. I remember the date because that morning the sky was painfully bright and clear, as if the city itself had decided there would be no dramatic weather for this ending. Only visibility. After the hearing, Felicia closed her folder and said, "You did not win because he fell apart. You won because you stopped carrying him." That stayed with me for a long time. I thought strength meant enduring more than should have been asked of me. I thought loyalty meant waiting for someone to become accountable if I loved them consistently enough. What I learned instead was that endurance without boundaries becomes permission. Cedric did not change because I gave him more chances. He changed only after access ended and consequence became real. There is a lesson in that, but not the soft kind people like to wrap in healing language. Some people only recognize the weight of what you did for them when they have to lift even a fraction of it themselves. My promotion came 2 months later. Senior staff engineer, better pay, better authority, better hours. The irony was almost too neat. The more my personal life stopped revolving around damage control, the more room my actual life had to expand. Amaya settled into the new routine more gracefully than I feared. Children understand peace faster than adults do. On Fridays, we started a ritual of making homemade pizza together. She stood on a little stool at the counter and scattered cheese far beyond the crust while I pretended not to notice. Then we watched a movie, and she usually fell asleep halfway through with flour still dusted across one cheek. Those quiet moments mattered more than any expensive outing Cedric had ever insisted our family needed. They felt like real abundance. Not the curated kind, the kind built from safety, predictability, and not having to wonder whether love is being quietly drained out of your life to support someone else's secret comforts. Cedric and I learned how to speak to each other in a more honest register after the divorce, though never an intimate one. He was punctual for custody exchanges. He paid what he was ordered to pay. He looked older within a year. Not in a broken way, just in the way people do when charm no longer shields them from the cost of their own choices. Once while dropping on my off, he stood on my porch and said, "I keep thinking about that spreadsheet." I looked at him and waited. At the time, he said, "I thought it was cruel. Now I think it was the first truthful thing anybody ever put in front of me." I believed him. That did not mean I felt softened toward him. It meant I had reached the point where his clarity was no longer necessary for mine. "The math was always there," I said. "You just thought love would keep hiding it." He nodded, almost smiled, and said, "You are right." Then he left. There was no satisfaction in that exchange, at least not the flashy kind. Just closure, the quiet kind that feels earned because it costs you years to recognize what should never have been negotiable. The most painful part of all of it, if I am honest, is not that Cedric cheated or lied or hid money. It is that he watched me love him faithfully and decided that love was a resource he could spend. He watched me work late while carrying our home. He watched me recover from childbirth and go back to deadlines. He watched me keep our daughter safe, keep our bills paid, keep our life looking stable enough for him to feel successful inside it. He knew exactly what I was giving. That is what made the betrayal so sharp. He did not take from me blindly. He took from me knowingly. He used family-related lies, work-related lies, child-related lies, and future-related lies. He wrapped selfishness in just enough ordinary language that I would mistake it for stress, immaturity, or temporary confusion. That is the cruelty of certain betrayals. They are not built on hate. They are built on the assumption that your devotion will absorb what the truth would never survive. Do I regret the spreadsheet? No. Do I regret exposing him? No. Do I regret leaving when I did instead of waiting for one more explanation, one more apology, one more manipulative collapse designed to make me rescue him from what he caused? No. What I regret is the length of time I spent confusing love with self-erasure. I regret how long I believed patience was noble when it was making me disappear inside my own life. Cedric said his money was his. I agreed. That was the moment everything changed. Because once I agreed, I stopped protecting him from the reality he had earned. And in that space, I saw something he never expected me to see clearly. My peace was mine too. My labor was mine. My clarity was mine. My daughter's stability was mine to protect. And once I understood that, there was nothing left in me that wanted the old marriage back. Some things do not break loudly. They just stop existing. Then if you are lucky and honest enough to choose yourself in time, something better begins where they ended. One of the most painful yet liberating lessons this story teaches us is that love should never be confused with financial and emotional exploitation. Talia spent years quietly carrying the entire weight of her marriage, paying every major bill, managing their daughter's needs, and building a stable home, while her husband Cedric treated her income as a shared resource and his own as sacred. When he suddenly demanded a fair 50-50 split, he wasn't asking for equality. He was trying to escape responsibility while still enjoying the comfort she provided. What he never expected was that the woman who had been silently carrying him would finally stop, do the math, and expose the hidden account, the affair, and the years of quiet betrayal. This story is a powerful reminder that real love does not keep score in a way that protects only one person. True partnership means both people contribute, both people sacrifice, and both people protect the family they claim to love. When someone benefits from your labor while hiding money, lying about trips, and refusing to support your shared child, they are not your partner. They are using you. Talia's quiet strength, her decision to document everything, And her courage to walk away show us that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is necessary. Never let anyone convince you that your hard work, your income, or your emotional labor is unlimited while theirs is optional. You are not a safety net. You are a woman with value, boundaries, and the right to choose a life that doesn't slowly erase you. Have you ever carried more than your share in a relationship only to realize you were being taken for granted? What was the hardest but most important lesson you learned about love, money, and self-respect? Share your honest thoughts and personal experiences in the comments below. Your story might give someone else the courage to stop carrying what was never theirs to carry alone. If this emotional story moved you, please like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss powerful, life-changing stories like this one. Thank you for watching.